CJ Stroud is one of the best young players in the NFL today, with a skill set and performances that rival even that of Patrick Mahomes. But how did he get to this point? How did he become so good? How did he make it to the NFL? Well, those are all questions that we're going to be answering today. So CJ Stroud was born on October 3rd, 2001 in Rancho Cucamonga, California. Growing up, his mom Kimberly and his dad Coleridge really pushed him into sports and were always there motivating him and supporting him throughout his career. CJ became really close with his dad specifically. He saw his dad as an inspiration. His dad was always there motivating him, teaching him new stuff. So CJ's dad was one of the closest people to him at this point, which is what makes what happens next all the worse. While CJ was growing up, his dad struggled with substance abuse, which is what led to his parents getting divorced and ultimately led to his dad getting picked up and locked up. So because CJ saw him as an inspiration and because they were so close, this hit CJ really hard. And he even went on to say in interviews that he felt betrayed by what his dad did, and he was wondering how his dad could even do something like that or end up in that way if he claimed he loved him so much. Now, where CJ differs from the average guy is that most guys in a situation similar to his would start walking down the dark path themselves. Instead, CJ started focusing way more on football, started leaning way more into his religion and getting closer to God. And that decision alone is what allowed him to become the person he is today, and we're gonna see how that transpired. So he was playing quarterback in high school, and although football was one of his main focuses, he wasn't getting the attention he wanted on the field. So that being said, his mom took him to a bunch of quarterback camps and a lot of football camps around the country, including the renowned Elite 11. The Elite 11 is where he really stood out for the first time. While playing 7v7s, he got close to 4,000 passing yards and 50 touchdowns, which finally gave him the attention and the platform that he needed and resulted in him getting a bunch of offers from big-time colleges across the country. So among big names like Oregon and Georgia, CJ decided to commit to
the Ohio State,
which was a bit of a difficulty for him because it was so far from where he lived. But again, CJ saw this as a challenge that he was willing to overcome. So in his freshman year, he was a backup to Justin Fields, so he didn't get too much playtime. But in his second year in 2021, he was named a starter, and that's where he really got the chance to stand out. He put up some pretty crazy numbers that season, close to 4,500 passing yards and 44 touchdowns, including over 570 yards and 6 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl, which is probably to date one of his biggest games all time. Ohio State was really balling out that year, but unfortunately their season did come to an end when they lost against their rivals Michigan State in the Big Ten. In 2022, he had more of the same. He racked up over 3,500 yards and 41 touchdowns, leading his team to an 11-1 record. Once again, their season did come to an end in the playoffs, losing to Georgia this time, but CJ did put up a good performance. He went for almost 350 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, and this performance brought even more scout attention to him, solidifying his position as one of the top picks in the draft. So moving on to the draft, the 2023 NFL draft, CJ Stroud was selected second overall by the Houston Texans, just behind Bryce Young, to whom he also finished runner-up in the 2021 Heisman selection. Now, CJ was drafted into a difficult environment. So the Houston Texans were rebuilding for a long time, as everyone knows. Deshaun Watson was gone, JJ Watt was gone, DeAndre Hopkins was gone. So it wasn't looking too good for the Houston Texans right now, and they're in the middle of a rebuild, but they thought that CJ was the key for them to get to that next level, and they were definitely right about that. He was instantly named a starter, and in his NFL debut against the Ravens, the team did end up with a loss, but CJ put up a pretty good performance, racking up just under 250 yards. Week 2, it was their home opener against the Colts, and the team again did end up with a loss, but CJ put up an amazing performance. He racked up almost 400 passing yards with 2 touchdowns. Now in week 3, this is where the record breaking starts. This guy's breaking records in his 3rd week. Insane. So the Texans got their first W of the season against the Jaguars, but with 0 interceptions, CJ Stroud became the first rookie in NFL history to go his first 3 games without throwing a pick. Fast forward to week 9, he's breaking more records. In week 9 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, CJ Stroud had the best NFL performance of his life. He broke the NFL rookie record for most passing yards in a single game with 470 passing yards, and he also passed for 5 touchdowns, including the game-winning pass.
Can they win it? Stroud to the end zone, touchdown, Tank Dell! CJ Stroud leads a magical drive.
He did carry on with his success, but unfortunately in week 14 he suffered a concussion against the Jets, which forced him to miss 2 games. He made a comeback just in time though, because in week 17 and week 18 they had back-to-back wins, including a must-win against the Colts. That allowed them to clinch a spot in the playoffs. Now, first round of the playoffs in the wildcard, they faced off against Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns, and they destroyed them. It wasn't even close. Houston ended up winning the game 45-14, and CJ had a pretty good performance, just under 300 passing yards with 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Now next up was a divisional series against the Baltimore Ravens, so really big challenge, and unfortunately Houston was not able to overcome them. The Ravens ended up with a pretty big win, final score being 34-10, and CJ was held to just 175 passing yards, and this put an end to the best Houston Texans season in a long time. Now CJ Stroud himself had a phenomenal rookie year, one of the best rookie seasons in NFL history. He ended the season with just over 4,100 yards, which put him in 3rd place all time for single season passing yards by an NFL rookie. And if he hadn't missed those 2 games with a concussion, he definitely would have broken the record, because he was less than 300 yards away from being number 1 all time. Now after this is 23 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions, and CJ Stroud ends up winning the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year award. And a lot of people even argue that he should have won the MVP. Now this year in the 2024 NFL season has been kind of a different story. The Houston Texans haven't been as dominant as they were last season, and this led to a lot of discourse. A lot of people start, you know how it is, people start running their mouth all the time. That's how it is in the NFL. That's how it is with the NFL fan base. People are starting to say that CJ Stroud is a bust. They're starting to call him all sorts of things. I've heard people call him CJ Fraud, which is hilarious. But despite all of this, the Houston Texans are still 9-5. They've won their division already, and they've made the playoffs. So they have a winning record. They're going to the playoffs, even though they didn't put up the same numbers they did last year, and they had some shaky performances throughout the season. And although I can't see them going far in the playoffs, I wouldn't say that they're a complete failure. And CJ Stroud by no means is a complete failure. But honestly, this isn't something that CJ isn't used to. He's growing up with a bunch of adversity. And I don't know if I mentioned earlier in the video, but even growing up while his father was locked up, obviously his mom struggled to raise them, and she had a lot of financial issues. So that's why for him, since a child, he's always had the mindset that he wants to make it out. He wants to be the guy to be able to help his family. He wants to be able to pay back his mom. He wants to be able to make everyone proud. And because of the whole religious side that CJ has, which is one of the main focal points in his life, he's always had that faith and that confidence that things are gonna get better, that God has a plan for him. So he honestly doesn't really worry too much about all that. And at the end of the day, every NFL player has a bad season. There's something called the sophomore slump that you guys probably heard of. It's more of a thing in college, but it also translates to the NFL as well. Rookies oftentimes they do well in their first year, and then second year in the league they start to struggle a little bit, but that doesn't mean that their career is done. That doesn't mean they're not good players. That doesn't mean they're not ballers. It just happens to every single player. Every single player in the league has had a bad season. So everyone that's turning on CJ Stroud, things like that just bother me. And so you guys aren't real fans. Give the guy a chance. He's 2 years into the league, And it's not like they're putting up a bad season either. I think the issue lies more with their O-line more than it does with CJ Stroud. But then again, people are just gonna hate just to hate. So it is what it is. We're gonna see what happens in the playoffs. We're gonna see what happens with the rest of CJ's career. And honestly, like I said, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league at the moment. And I think this is gonna be the theme for a long time to come. So yeah, I'm just excited to see what CJ has in his career. I'm excited to see how determined he can stay, how faithful he can stay to his team, how faithful he can be to God, because all those things are what makes CJ who he is. And honestly, he's just an amazing person, amazing football player, and I wish him all the best. So that's gonna be it for today's video. We got more videos coming up. It's gonna be a weekly thing, like I've mentioned before. And if you guys want me to make a video on your favorite football player, just make sure to leave it in the comments, and we'll get to that as soon as possible. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one.